Welcome back to Read Out Loud, the podcast where stories matter, creativity reigns, and terms of service, well, might just betray us. I'm Matt, here as always with the endlessly insightful, irresistibly effervescent Christina.
Yay!
Yes, and today we're going to dive into something that hits every reader right in the bookshelf, the truth about ebooks and whether we actually own the stories we buy.
Yes.
That's right. You drop $10 on a digital book, you download it to your device, and you think it's yours forever, but what if it's not? What if your library can just disappear one day without any thought because of a licensing clause that you never read? Or because Amazon changed its mind? Well, we're going to get into that here and more. But Christina, why don't you tell us about our guests that we have with us this week?
Because today we have Kelly Peterson, and she and I worked at Borders together and worked, even after Borders, we were working on stuff together with the company she worked with, my own business and things like that. She was the very last person at Borders and switched off the website before she moved on. She is absolutely the expert I go to, and especially with ebook stuff. But Kelly, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I was the ebook manager at Borders, and at the end I was running the website. I wasn't the last person. There were lawyers that were there way past me, but they had to do a lot of money settlement that I was not involved with.
But you shut off the website.
But I did turn off the website for sure. And I went from there to a digital distribution company because it was ebooks. And it was that company, Inscribe Digital, was acquired by IPG, Independent Publishers Group. And I worked there for 12 years, I think, altogether between those two. And I worked with about 600 publishers. And I've been on the board I was one of the founders and been on the board of Bay Area Women in Publishing, which reps for women and non-binary folk in publishing to try and help people get promoted, since women are underrepresented in the management and leadership in publishing. And I was on the board of the Independent Book Publishers Association. I served the full 4 years that you can do. So
yes. And there again illustrates why I say you are my go-to person for that. We have invited you here to talk specifically about this issue of, it's connected to the way that Amazon is now calling it, licensing the book to you. Kelly, explain a little bit more about that.
So let me start by why this happens. Okay, so there is a new statement that you see when you buy a Kindle book that says, it's right underneath the buy now with one click. It'll say, by placing an order, you're purchasing a content license and agreeing to Kindle Store's terms of use. And basically those terms of use say that that Amazon can remove a book that's problematic if they need to, that you're agreeing that this is a license and not ownership. Some basic things are like that. And it's got a lot of legalese around it about why that's the case. But it basically is because they are making a claim that this is like software. And there is a really justifiable reason for that. And that is because that is the same argument that publishers made when they went agency in the first place. So when Penguin and Macmillan and everyone went agency when Apple Books became a thing, and they wanted to set a price that is the same across all retailers, they did it because they were basically saying that when you buy a digital product, it is like software. As the publisher, they own the content. They give a file to the retailers, but they're not the the retailer isn't paying for that file. They just hold that file. And then they're passing it along to the customer as an agent for that customer. And they're holding the money and then paying the owner of the file, which is the publisher, right? So the copyright holder. And that's the same thing that Microsoft does when they sell you Microsoft 365, right? They're going, you can buy Microsoft 365 from them, or you can buy it from Best Buy, but the money always goes back to Microsoft 365. It goes back to Microsoft, right? So it is that in that case, the retailer is operating as an agent for the customer. They're saying, we have the customer and we're going to give you that customer and allow them to buy your book through us, not from us, but through us. And even though there was a lawsuit about turning agency, it had nothing to do with whether or not that was valid. That was all acceptable. That was something the court found perfectly acceptable. What the court didn't like with agency is that they thought that the publishers all colluded and they talked to each other before they switched to agency.
Right.
Now, I still was not satisfied with that judgment. I'll just be honest with you. I think that there was a lot of lobbying that was involved in that I thought was pretty unfair. But I do think that there's a big case to be made that there is a lot in common between an ebook and software. They are all electronic. The retailers do not buy that file. It's not like they're paying hundreds of $1,000s for that file and can sell it as many times as they want. They get that for free from the retailer or from the publishers, and then they get to just hold on to it and then pass it to as many customers as they want after a purchase. And that has a lot of things in common with software. On the other hand, there are a lot of publishers that are wholesale and they want to stay wholesale. And they say that they want retailers to be able to make choices about whether or not they discount their books. And they want to consider it like a print book, because inherently what's in the ebook is exactly the same as what's in the print book. And so they don't want to make it, just because it's in a different format, any different, or they don't want it to be treated any differently than the print book itself. And so they want to have things like borrowing, and they want to have things like, even transferring, which has been talked about by a lot of retailers, but never implemented, so that I could read a book and then give my book to a friend. They haven't been able to overcome that, though, because of all of the stuff that goes around software, right? So these two forces are in opposition. Like, is it like software or is it like a print book? And you hear these things come up a lot. So Amazon decided on February 28th, they were going to stop people from downloading their content. And they can no longer download their content. They can read it in any of the Kindle apps. It will live there in the Kindle apps, but they can no longer move it to their computer or move it into another app to read. And that caused a lot of concern for people. And it caused a lot of concern for readers, but also for authors. And that's understandable because of Kindle Unlimited. There are a lot of authors who are only at Amazon. So if Amazon takes a dislike to your book, then there could be a potential big problem for you. That could be your only market. And then all of a sudden, what could happen to you as an author if they decide you are the one that your book is problematic? And I know that as somebody who reads a lot of LGBTQIA fiction, that would affect a humongous part of my library. I have probably close to 1,000 books in my Amazon library. It's not my biggest, because I have way more in Apple books, I will say. And I maybe more in Kobo as well. Kobo is it's the easiest to download your titles from. So if you're somebody who worries about this Amazon issue, you can shop at Kobo and you have a lot more accessibility to your titles. But I would say that I do understand Amazon's point of view. I am concerned, though, as a reader and listener of audiobooks, that I have spent a lot of money in my collection. And I am concerned that if the government gets worried about LGBTQ content, that if they wiped away my library, I would have no recourse. And I do tend to buy from Amazon only if it's on sale, so that I'm not investing a large amount of money.
Yeah. So what it sounds like to me is that it's kind of two-pronged. You've got the software side of it where we can see where they're going with that. But there's also this worry of some censorship. So it then becomes a censorship issue. And in turn with that, I also feel like it's, yes, even though Amazon has added that, which I had thought to myself when I did recently see that, and like, you mean I don't own these? I've spent all this, and I've got thousands of titles. Do I not own these? You know, so it is like, as a reader, it's kind of like, oh my gosh, I used to have this grand library before ebooks came along. And then there are still books that I purchase as an ebook, and then also purchase the hard copies because I want them on my bookshelf all nice and pretty.
Sure.
But it still begs the question of these thousands of books. If I don't own these and then either have to rebuy them somewhere if Amazon goes under, which they probably won't. But if something happens with Kindle, and obviously if we're talking censorship, there is, Matt and I do tend to stay a little apolitical, but this isn't an issue, either one of us. We care deeply about censorship. We already did a banned book episode a while back. I don't believe in censorship of any kind. Every reader has a choice to buy that book or not, to allow their kids to read that book or not. That is, other choice. But the minute you start censoring books or banning books, you open the world to banning anything, censoring what comes next after books. Is it language and things like that? So it does worry me a little bit that Amazon has that control. And I know that the authors that I work with, they always have to come to selling as, do I put my books with Kindle Unlimited or do I go wide? How do I make money? And I do worry for, the advice that I have always given, and I don't feel that this will ever change, is that you need to be everywhere that readers are, and give them the choice of doing that. But, like I said, it's scary. It's scary for authors.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. What I would say though is that there are a lot of authors who make way more money in Kindle Unlimited than they would make wide. Yeah. And I get that. Like, I think that it's hard when the audience has completely gone to Kindle Unlimited, because then they are only reading Kindle Unlimited. The data from Amazon that they shared with me when I was working at IPG was that there are some categories where once more than 80% of the readership has Kindle Unlimited, and paranormal romance is one of those. And so was LGBTQ romance. Once that happens, then the sales decrease dramatically. So it is that they stop reading the authors that they enjoy, even if those authors just move out of KU. They want to read only KU books. And it's very hard to get somebody who went from spending, back in the day, romance readers used to spend between $50 and $60 a month on romance books. And with KU, then they're only paying $12.99 a month. It's hard to get them to go back up to that $50 to $60. They're like, hey, my book budget is now $12.99. I'm great. I totally, I'm sympathetic to the readers, but I also want to say to those readers that authors can't afford to be full-time authors if that's the way that you're going to buy books.
Yeah.
If you're only going to give your money to Amazon, your authors are going to have other jobs, and they're not going to be able to release books in the method that you want to see them. It's going to hurt them.
There's also a couple things with Amazon that worry me, is that they have all the control. They can turn off Kindle Unlimited anytime they want. they can take a book out of Kindle Unlimited and off of their site anytime they want. I mean, there was a New York Times, USA Today best-selling author whose books were removed, and she was not given a reason why other than she violated their terms of use. Yeah. And later on,
saw that. I saw that in the paper. It was Ruby Dixon.
No,
they did this to Ruby Dixon too.
Oh, did they? Oh, I didn't know about that. No,
this was huge. She went off sale for 5 days, and all of her books just plummeted.
Yes. Yes. And same with this other author. Her name is escaping me right now. If I remember it, I'll let you know. But yeah. And so, and it turned out that what happened was somebody was offended by something one of the characters did. And so then said these books are offensive. Yes. And so Kindle, and so the author literally had to find somebody at Amazon to speak with to say, hey, this is not what's going on. And I think if she had been any other author, perhaps she wouldn't have had the leverage to get back on there. So that's number one. And number two, as you were saying, these authors that do make their money from Amazon, what happens to them if Amazon turns off the lights for, again, I'm not speculating that they're going to, and nor would I think that they would, because they're making money too. I mean, this is, if authors are making money from them, they are also making money. But I think just because of the climate that we're living in, I think everyone feels so uncertain.
Yeah.
Well, it has been, censorship has been on the rise, but there has always been censorship. I don't want to make it seem like it's not, that this is a new thing. However, last year in the United States, according to the ALA, 2,452 new titles were added to censorship bans. That's a huge increase. And there were 821 major attempts to censor, that libraries, 821 libraries that created new censorship programs. So that's big. Like, the movement for censorship has been growing. And that's one of the things that has made me more concerned as somebody who reads ebooks exclusively. I worry about losing access to my content that I own, but I also worry about libraries losing content, because I do read library books as well that are ebooks. And I worry about people thinking that it's okay to choose other people's reading material for them. Like, to me, I feel like, I believe in the windows, mirrors, doors idea about reading. People should be able to see themselves with the mirror. People should be able to look through the windows of others and see what their lives are like. And people should be able to walk into new experiences through the books they read. And I don't think that you'll ever get that if you censor content that you don't agree with. Toni Morrison is one of the most banned authors, and yet her books have been monumentally eye-opening for people who are not African American. People who are white and read Toni Morrison's books learn a ton about the African American experience that they wouldn't have otherwise. Alice Walker's The Color Purple, which was made into a movie twice, it has also been censored hundreds of times. So it really is important to understand that these books that are censored are usually the books that are the most thought-provoking and the most important. The most banned book in the last couple of years has been Genderqueer, which is a graphic novel by Maya. I don't have it up on the screen, so I can't remember her last name. Kotabi, I think it's something similar to that. But if you look up Genderqueer, you're going to find it. It's all one word. Yeah, and it's this very frank book about trans identity primarily, but also about gender fluid identities. And it is, the pictures can be a little graphic, which is part of the reason why it's getting so much challenge, but it's beautiful and it's open and it's honest. And I think it's one of the best books for a teen going through a gender crisis that I could possibly imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the good news is that people have embraced that book, and it's sold way more copies being banned than I think it ever would have sold without the ban.
Always how it goes.
Which, well, I wish it was always how it goes. You know, unfortunately, that works for like the top 10.
Yeah.
For the books below that, a lot of them get overlooked
It's like the
completely.
Streisand effect a little bit. But
Yeah.
there was one piece, I think, as we talk about censorship as a result of this license versus ownership piece, right? There's, I think, another piece around even like cultural preservation, like being able to say through history, like it was just on Spaceship Earth at Epcot, and they go through the whole piece where they talk about the libraries in Alexandria as kind of the first backup system, right? This is the whole thing here where if you've got these digital files and they are licensed versus acquired, let's say, you run the risk of not being able to kind of keep that from a cultural perspective and pass that along and keep cultures that may be dwindling alive.
Yeah, that is scary. I mean, you can erase things very quickly digitally in a way that you can't with print. You know, you can have a book bonfire and you can burn hundreds of copies, but you can't burn all the print copies. But you can erase the digital copies in moments. And that can be very scary. I do recommend, if you have ebooks, that you should consider downloading your ebooks to your computer or to a hard drive. And the same for your audiobooks. Audible, by the way, does allow you to download any of your purchased books onto your, I've got all mine downloaded on my hard drive, just in case. And I'm hoping I never have to worry about this, but I'm being cautious and careful. But as somebody who invests heavily in my books, I feel I want to support authors with the books that I read, and I want to purchase the ones that I love. I think that it behooves me to make sure that I can get a copy that I can keep. And if you're an author, it's important for you to consider, like, okay, you might make most of your money from Amazon, but when do you start taking those books out of Kindle Unlimited and making them wide, even if you do make a lot of money with Kindle Unlimited? Or when do you start creating your own store? Because that can be really useful as well. Because if they do take your books down and you've had 10,000 copies sold, you're going to get 10,000 people coming to you saying, I lost my book. What are you going to do? And that's going to be horrible. And so everybody should think about, like, in my head, how am I going to handle that? Am I going to ask them for proof that they had it? How am I going to figure this out? Because it could happen.
Yeah.
Especially if you have content that's racier or that is somebody could find problematic. And I am worried about things that are gaining targeted right now, like trans books in particular is an area that I'm concerned about. I have a decent sized library of trans romance, and I think, oh, well, are those the books that might get targeted? So I have a list of them so that I know if something goes missing. My library is so big, I might not know otherwise. So I've been spending some time cataloging all my books, putting in the themes tags so that I know that if one goes away, I'll know it's gone and where I had it. And this is something I probably should have been doing all along, but man, it's taken me forever to do this spreadsheet.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine.
Yes.
Well, I think too, we should talk a little bit about some of the like sources where you can get some of the ebooks that aren't licensed, right? Where you can literally buy them.
Yeah, where
absolutely.
Which retailers have you've bought it, you own it?
So the first thing I'll say is if an author sells direct, the author will always make the most money if you buy direct from them. And you will be downloading it directly from them. So that is a copy that you will have. And you can always sideload those into any app you like to read. So if I'll give you an example. Vaughn Cassidy, it's VAWN Cassidy, CASSIDY, does mostly Kindle Unlimited, but she's done some side characters from her series that she's released only on her store. And I think this is a brilliant strategy because she's done an ebook and an audiobook for these side characters, and they're extremely well done. And I downloaded them and I loved them. And I I check her store regularly to see if she's put anything new out. It is a smart way to do it. Now,
Yeah.
Kobo also allows you to download any book that is DRM free. You can download those, and that works really well. I have not started downloading my Apple books, so I haven't seen how that works yet, because I tried Amazon in February, and I've been working on my Audible library since. I had 800 Audible books, and those take a little while to download. So I've been doing that, and now I'm working on my chirp. So
one of my favorites is Humble Bundle.
Oh,
They will
yes. I
often
have a
do
lot. Yes. Great.
a big sale of those where they put together a bunch of different ebooks, and then
That's
you can
very
sort of
cool.
name your price, and they will
Mhm.
oftentimes then donate to charity along with it, or they do it every time actually. And then you can even go in and determine if I want more to go to charity versus humble bundle. You can tweak it a little bit if you'd like, but you know, you get these. I've gotten so many different Dungeons and Dragons or books that I like to read, different genre bundles that they do. So humblebundle.com, great place to go. Gumroad, good place for creators to sell their stuff, including, again, DRM-free ebooks. So both of those are really good resources as well.
Smashwords they sell directly for authors, and there are quite a few authors that have content up there. They also have a lot of content that would get targeted. I think they have a lot of racy, non-con and stuff like that. If that's what you read, then you're going to find it's going to all be directed to Smashwords.
Sure.
There is publishers' websites. Also, they're delivering you the EPUB. So if you're seeing, like, I know Drumspinner Press sends EPUBs directly, but almost every publisher website that sells ebooks sends you the EPUB. You have a download link. And BookFunnel, a lot of authors are using BookFunnel for their fulfillment, but you can download that EPUB directly. And you can either open it in the BookFunnel app or Bluefire Reader or any of. I usually send them to Kindle myself, because then I can search them by author.
Yeah. Well, and we'll link all of these in the show notes as well. So if you are trying to take notes and furiously trying to keep up with the different resources out there, we'll make sure that you've got those. Yeah. That's awesome.
But yeah, I like to look everywhere because I'm a sale hunter. You know, I love to get a good sale on a book.
BookBub is one of my favorites. Yep.
I hit that BookBub newsletter like no one's business.
Yes. And since I do a lot of my listening in the car, like you said, Chirp is a very good one. I've got an Audible membership as well. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, awesome.
Yeah. So the other thing I would say is, I mentioned Kobo. I mentioned Barnes and Noble. Actually, you can download your Barnes and Noble books as well. The nice thing about Barnes and Noble is they do have a share feature. I mentioned that earlier, but I didn't really explain it. So anything that's independently published is automatically set up for sharing. So if you come in through their Nook program, when the Nook First or whatever they call it, they let you'll automatically be enrolled for sharing. If you go in if you're one of the big five and you are an author there, they're automatically turned off, but they can enable it if you ask them to. And it's 2 weeks on automatic loan. So it's like doing a library loan, but from one of your friends, and you can't access it if they're reading it, but it's actually very easy to implement. You just go in and it's in the pull down under the ... And I've shared books with my mom and she loves it. So I highly recommend that.
Yeah.
Nice.
That to me sounds like a really great feature. And I'm actually a little surprised that they don't talk more about it and, try to, bring people over for that feature alone, you know?
And with Apple Books, I have the family sharing plan. So I buy all the books for my family pretty much. And my family goes in and they just looking through my library to see what they want to read. I've got thrillers in there for my husband. I've got in there for my sister Katie. I've got books in there for my sister Colleen, and then stuff for me. So
Nice.
It looks like Hallmark just went crazy in there.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome.
With some serial killers thrown in for fun.
Oh, yeah, of course. Gotta have some true crime in there, too.
Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, I would say there's also, I know that the reason I can't give you a consolidated list is because each of the publisher sites that do it is that you just choose what you like and visit the author. And the authors would usually have linked where they go. Just try and find the one that is the most friendly to them. And you want to get the thing that's closest to the author. So the author is the best, then the publisher, then the retailers. And Kobo pays the most, then Apple, then Barnes & Noble and Amazon.
Perfect.
Oh, that's interesting. I think that's a topic for another discussion, Kelly.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Who pays the most?
Yeah.
Well, very good. All right. Well, I think we've really brought it home as far as that goes, and our little adventure down what licensing versus ownership really truly means. Huge thanks to Kelly for lending her voice and insight on this wild, weird, and honestly worrying world of digital ownership. I'm definitely side-eyeing my Kindle right now. Maybe back
Look, it might all be fine. I think people are just trying to cover their bases. So I get that, but I don't love that they're trying to cover their bases instead of defending our product. Yeah. I do feel like, having worked with all of the retailers for so long, I feel and seen how people have responded, I do feel safest with my Apple books, which is why I'm leaving them for last before I try to do anything. Apple has always had a long history of protecting their customers. They don't disclose anybody's messages. They refuse to turn over anybody's info. I feel like they're going to never tell anybody what's in my library. And I don't think that they're going to go through and take anything out of it.
For sure.
But that is just my opinion. And it is not anything that Apple has clearly stated, nor do I think they ever would, because then they would be legally bound to do it. And that would place them in a very sticky spot with it's tough for them to, and they've gone up against the FBI several times, though, with subpoenas. So I feel a lot of confidence with them that I do not feel with other companies.
Sure.
Kobo's Canadian too, by the way. So
nice.
They can't be pressured by the U.S. government, which is something to think about.
Yes.
Well, remember, no, you're good. Just remember, stories are meant to be shared, remembered and kept. So whether you're reading on a screen or flipping real pages, just know what you're getting and what you're giving up. And if today's episode made you think twice about your digital bookshelf, do us a favor. Share it with a fellow book lover, subscribe, and leave us a review. So until next time, this is Right Out Loud. Hey, thanks so much for listening to the podcast. We really hope that you're enjoying every bit of it, but we would love to hear your feedback. Drop us an email either to matt@rightoutloudpod.com or Christina@bookmatchmaker.com. We would love to hear your thoughts. What's working, what's not working, and what do you want to hear more of? Thanks so much. We really appreciate it.